Welcome back, everyone. Dan Vega here, Spring Developer Advocate at VMware. Today I want to talk to you about connecting to a database that's running in a container. So I was putting together a demo the other day, went over to start.spring.io, filled in some metadata. I picked the web dependency, the PostgreSQL driver, the Docker Compose support, and the Spring Data JDBC dependencies. So all standard stuff. We've done this before. In fact, this isn't even an intro to the Docker Compose module. If you want, I'll go ahead and leave a video up there or in the description below. What happened here was I went out and built a pretty basic application, fired it up, everything was working, and then I thought, hey, I want to go ahead and connect to that database using my database tools. So I have a program called Table Plus on the Mac OS I like. The database tools inside of IntelliJ are really great as well. So I wanted to connect there and just be able to view the data, run some queries against that data. And I was not able to connect. And I started scratching my head and I said, what is going on here, Dan? At first I thought it was a container thing and maybe something going on with Docker and I needed to get the container IP address. I even asked you guys on Twitter and I got a lot of really great responses. So thank you for helping me debug the situation. But eventually I found out what was going on, and that is what today's video is about. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to head over to start.spring.io. We're going to create a very simple application. We're going to recreate this problem that I had, and then I'm going to walk you through exactly what's going on and why it happened. And I think this is important to know, and something we didn't really cover in the last Docker Compose video. So I'm excited about this one. I hope you learned something new. With that, let's write some code. All right, I'm going to get started here at start.spring.io. I'm going to pick Maven as my build tool. You'll need at least 3.1 for this example. I'm picking 3.2, one of the milestones. I'm going to go ahead and say this is dev.danvega. We'll call this the DB demo. I'm going to choose Java 21 because that's what I'm running right now, and you should be too. Let's go ahead and select web. We're going to choose Spring Data JDBC. We're going to pick that PostgreSQL driver, and finally we'll choose the Docker Compose support. So this is really all we need to get started. I'm going to go ahead and generate this. This will download a zip. I'll go ahead and open this up in my favorite IDE, which is IntelliJ Ultimate. You can open it up in whatever text editor or IDE you're most productive in. All right, so here I am in my application. You can go through and build out a simple demo if you want. I don't even need to do that for what I want to talk to you about today. So we're just going to leave this as is. Now I do want to look at the Compose YAML file. So I would come in here and I see that we're using the latest Postgres version. I like to just go ahead and define a version here just so that everybody's on the same version when they go ahead and pull down this application. I'm going to change the database name to Spring Blog. I'll leave the password at secret and I'll change the username to Dan. I'll go ahead and run this application and we see that it sees the compose file. So it's reading that by convention. It will look for the container. It creates it, starts it, waiting, healthy, ready to go. Tomcat has started on port 8080 and everything is good. If we were to go through here and create a table and create some repositories, create some dummy data, insert it into the database, everything would work as expected. So now here comes the question, can I connect to that database? Well, we know what the properties of that database are, right? We are running on localhost 5432. The name of the database is Spring Blog. Here's my username and password. So I should be able to use something like Table Plus. So I'm going to open up Table Plus. All right, so I'm going to open up Table Plus here, try to connect to PostgreSQL here. We'll say the name of this is Spring Blog, localhost 5432. The username is Dan, and the password is secret. The database is Spring Blogs. Let's go ahead and try to test that, and it fails. So this is where I ended up. Maybe it's something to do with Table Plus. Let's go ahead and try IntelliJ's database tools. So I'm going to connect to, let's see, Postgres, and we're going to fill in the same information here. So Dan, secret, 5432. That looks good. Let's test the connection, and that fails. So what is going on here? Well, to understand what's going on, we need to know a little bit about this Docker Compose file. And so if you are really familiar with Docker, then you probably already know what the problem is, right? But if you just get this file generated for you and you're not really sure what's going on, that's okay. What I want to look at here is the ports mapping. But before we get to that, I want to talk about a quick way that you can kind of debug this, right? All right, so let's talk about this compose YAML file. So normally, if we don't use Docker Compose, right, we go over to our application.properties, we'll fill in some information about our data source on how to connect to the database. That way, a data source bean is created for us at runtime, everything works, we can go ahead and talk to that database. We don't have anything in here, so what happens? Well, Spring sees this Docker Compose file and it pulls out the properties from here, like the database username, password, and DB, and then what environment's it in, what port it's in, and this makes a connection, creates a data source bean from that. Now, how does this work? This works because of a class in here, an interface called the connection details. If we look at connection details, that is an interface. There's nothing in it. But if we look over here, there are some implementations of this. And if we go down, there is a JDBC somewhere in here, JDBC connection details. And that knows how to get the username, the password, and the JDBC URL. So this will go ahead and construct all the information that it needs, which means if there's a JDBC connection details class somewhere, we could probably use that to our advantage here to go ahead and debug this situation and find out what's going on. And that's exactly what I'm going to do here. So I'm going to create a new bean. This is going to be a command line runner. This is a command line runner. I'm going to take in that JDBC connection details. We'll call that, let's just call this JDBC. And this is going to return args. And in here, we're going to go ahead and print some information out. All right, so I'm going to say var details is equal to, and we're going to use string templates here. And I'm going to put this in a text block. And let's close this off. And what is IntelliJ doing here? It's probably saying, hey, I don't know what that is. This is string templates. And IntelliJ is saying, oh, this is not supported. Let's go ahead and support it. So what I want to do is I want to print some information out about what is going on behind the scenes. Maybe I want to know what class this is. I mean, we know what it's the JDBC connection details, but it may not be the case all the time. So I'm going to use string templates here and say, hey, JDBC, go ahead and get the class and get the name. All right, so that's one line. On the next line, I might say, what is that JDBC URL look like? So let's say URL, and let's say jdbc.getjdbc.url, and that is that. What is the username? Let's go ahead and print that out. jdbc.getUsername. Okay, and then finally, what is the password? And now I can say jdbc.getPassword. All right, so now we have some information there, and all I want to do is print that out to the console. So I can say sout JDB details, and that should print out. So now let's go ahead and rerun the application and see if we can't find out what's going on here. Okay, so there's our information. We can see that it's a Postgres Docker Compose connection details. So that's the actual class. We can see the JDBC URL is JDBC Postgres localhost. Wait a minute, 60583. We should be running on 5432, right? Well, this is where the Docker Compose file comes in and understanding what you're doing when you're mapping ports. And if we go over to the documentation for Docker Compose, we can see the ports here. And there are three options when it comes to the syntax. You can specify both ports. So on the left would be the host, on the right would be a container. Specify just the container port. An ephemeral host port is chosen for the host port. So in this case, this is what we are doing here. We are saying, hey, the container port is 5432, but I don't really care what the host port is. And if we don't know what the host port is, then we can't really connect to it, right? So now what I'm saying here is I know what that port is. I can come in here to my database tools. Let's go ahead and connect to Postgres localhost. Here's the port I want you to connect to. It's Dan, it's secret, and the database name is Spring Blog. And now that looks a lot like this. So if we go ahead and test this out, we can connect to it. So that was the issue that I was having. And that was just me not understanding what was happening underneath the hood. So now how can we fix this? Again, we saw the different ways that we can declare map ports. The one being, hey, this is the container port, and we'll just choose a random port when we go ahead and start up. Or we can be very specific here and say, I want you to map 5432 on the host to 5432 on the container. So now if I go ahead and change this up, restart that, we can see in our logs there that I am now running on 5432. So here in my database tool, I can go ahead and change to that. And now I am connected to that. There are no tables now, but that is the issue that I was having. So I thought this was a really great little tip to go ahead and find out what was going on underneath the hood. I was able to use string templates in Java 21. I was able to get out the JDBC connection details and really print out what was going on. And that really told me that, it was the port issue. That's why I wasn't able to connect to the database. So, hey friends, I hope you learned something new today. I hope this helps you out in your development journey. If it did and you found value in it, do me a favor, give me a thumbs up, subscribe to the channel, and as always, happy coding, friends.